Hey, Chris here from Critcast again, back with another video dispatch. Hopefully with the audio corrected this time. Apologize for that last week. Apparently the software I was using caused a 3-second delay in the audio. Um, Pretty bad flaw if you'd ask me, but hopefully using this software seems to work, recording right on the YouTube site. Anyway, in any case, I saw two movies this weekend in theaters. They were both pretty good. One was a lot more fun than the other, while the other one seems to be a bit more of like an Oscar bait type of film. Let's start with that movie. The Oscar bait type film is the new one from Clint Eastwood. It's called J.Edgar, and in case you didn't know, and based on my experience at the theater, many of you don't know. This movie is about J. Edgar Hoover, a former director of the FBI. He was in charge of the FBI for about 48 years. I was actually surprised to hear like a lot of people wondering just who is this J. Edgar guy. I mean, granted, I'm not exactly a big history guy. I don't know a lot about him before seeing this movie, other than I knew who he was, knew a few details about him, but that's about it. This biopic shows him from his early days in the Department of Justice in the 1930s, all the way through to his dying days. The framework of the movie is using Hoover as narrating his memoirs for a book. This leads to a fractured storytelling line that doesn't really work for me too well. Kind of jumps around in his in the among the different events of his life, from the Department of Justice to stuff in the FBI. Um, it didn't really work for me because I thought that they jumping around kind of hurt the overall cumulative effect of the events of his life. Still, it's still a pretty good movie with a great performance from Leonardo DiCaprio, who was sure to get an Oscar nod from this due to the Academy's love for mimicry and transformation, of which he does both very well here. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that being criteria for being one of the best performances because it doesn't really lend itself to really the creation of a new character because people know what Hoover, people who are familiar with Hoover know what he sounds like, what he looks like. It, Still, I'm not trying to take anything away from it because it was a very good performance, and I'm sure he'll get recognized for that. Maybe not necessarily win, but definitely a nomination. That also goes for the makeup department, who also did a very good job of transforming him from the young 20-something Hoover right up to his dying days when he was an elderly man in his 80s, I believe. I'm not sure exactly how old he was when he died. Um, Still, Hoover was a very interesting individual, although this movie is a bit dry. It does have some relevancy to the events of today. Not that I'm really going to go into here. I'm not the most political minded, not the most best armed to get into that discussion, but still, it's not helped by Eastwood's sparse direction. He doesn't really do anything to punch up the material. So, while it does have a relevance to today, it's not really terribly exciting, and it's a bit long too. The funniest thing though that I noticed when I was watching it that if there was a couple different turns in Hoover's life, he might have been Ed Gein. Now I know I had the same thing with Hoover, and most people I told that to kind of looked at me like, "Who's Ed Gein?" Well, look him up. You might see some parallels. Nothing big, but I thought it was kind of funny. About an hour after that, after J. Edgar ended, I moved into my second film of the evening, which was Tarsem Singh's new one, Immortals, which is his first wide release since The Cell back in 2000. Even though this is only his third movie, his middle movie, The Fallen, yes, was didn't really go very far in theatrical release, but that was probably his best narrative film. Although he does show his skill with the visuals throughout all three of his movies. This movie is about the loosely based on the Greek myth of Theseus and the Minotaur. Although it has been said that this is a fictional story, it's not completely based off the myth. It's just it's their ideas, it's takeoff on what the myth is. It's a fun movie where he gets to show off his mastery of interesting visuals. Something that he's, like I said, has always been shown through his films. Probably better with the visuals than he is with actual narrative structure. Um, Although this one does have an interesting emotional base of the idea of Theseus avenging his mother, who he couldn't protect. Combine that with the more epic idea of one man leading a battle against the evil Titans and King Hyperion, who wants to release the Titans to fight against the gods. And again, I'm not that familiar with Greek mythology, so I can't get into the specific details as to where it differs and where it's exact. But it is a fun movie, and they do a pretty good job with the 3D, the 3D visualization is well done. Um, it's a straightforward story. It's actually pretty fun towards the end when the action starts kicking up. There is some CGI blood and some post-action slow-mo, which is different than say Zack Snyder's they did with 300, where you usually get this one, you get the action and then the slow motion stuff happens after that. It's actually it's maybe more the same, but it's a little bit different, and I thought it was effective. I did even the CG blood. I'm more of a practical effects guy, but the CG blood actually worked, and it was nice seeing that kind of violence on the screen every once in a while. Uh, the performances were pretty good in it. Stevensdorf seemed a little bit out of place. I wasn't actually expecting him to see him in this movie, but he wasn't too bad. It was also nice seeing the new Superman Henry Cavill in action. I'm not that familiar with his performance, with his acting, and this is probably probably the only movie I'll get to see him in before Superman, which I believe is due out next year. And then there's of course Mickey Rourke, who is just he's a blast as King Hyperion, just chewing up the scenery whenever at any chance that he gets. It may not necessarily be a movie that's going to be remembered, but it's definitely a fun time in the theater. This week I also watched a couple movies on home video, Netflix, and they're both a couple older B movies, stuff that isn't necessarily going to be, at the top of many people's lists. The first one I'm going to mention it's from 1990. It's called The Dark Side of the Moon. It's an interesting concept, science fiction horror kind of thing, where it's set in space, whereas they try to set up they try to link this section of the moon to the Bermuda Triangle, which is being used by get this Satan to collect souls to use in his battle against God. It's ridiculous. It's a bit intriguing. It's definitely low budget. The effects aren't that good. The acting isn't that good. The sets are pretty cheap. There's I don't know why, but the ship's main computer is a female android who just sits in a room and answers questions. It's quite strange. Still, it's kind of fun. The most notable in terms of the actors in the movie is Joe Turkel, who was also the bartender in The Shining and one of the doctors in Blade Runner, and someone I actually got to meet this past summer. Really nice guy, great stories about all the films that he's been in, which is probably a lot more interesting than actually this movie is as a whole. But if you like cheap science fiction movies with a low budget, check it out. It's interesting. It's nothing particularly special. The highlight of the week, however, had to be Mutant Hunt. It's a ridiculously awful B movie from 1987, directed by Tim Kincaid, who was also behind such classics as Breeders and Robot Holocaust. Yes, I know. If you've seen either one of those movies, you know that he's not exactly a good director. But there's something about this movie it goes so far to being to the bad side of the coin that it actually comes around and turns into like this awesome movie. It's ridiculous. It takes a certain kind of film fan to actually enjoy this kind of movie, and I guess I'm one of them. There's androids, villains in funny costumes, nonsensical plot lines, bad acting. It's the kind of thing that makes 80s era B movies great, and why some of us can really love these sort of things. Well, that's about wraps it up for this week, and I hope you have a great Thanksgiving, and I'll see you next time I'm here. Okay. Please let me know if you liked it. If you like this, if there's anything else you'd like to see me to talk about, let me know. I'll see what I can do. Try to work something out. This is new for me. It's not something I've actually ever really been comfortable doing, but who knows? If enough people like it, if I have enough fun doing it, it is kind of fun. But it's definitely a new experience for me. But until next time, make sure you check out my full-length ramblings over at criticaloutcast.com, and I hope you enjoyed it.